The human saved the enemy's daughter. The alien mother took notice the sky above the alien planet burned with streaks of orange and violet, the remnants of the day's fading sun slipping behind jagged mountains. Smoke rose from the cities below, black and choking, curling like fingers into the fading light. Commander Elias Kane stood on the ridge, watching the ruins stretch before him. His boots pressed into the hard, cracked ground, and he could feel the subtle vibration of distant explosions as his fleet engaged the alien forces. War had come to this planet long before he arrived, but nothing prepared him for the reality of it. Cities reduced to ash, fields burned to black, and the silence of lives lost. Elias was a human, a species often underestimated by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. His people were known for their resilience, their ingenuity, and above all, their stubbornness. In battles like these, those qualities mattered more than anything else. He scanned the horizon with sharp eyes, trained over years of combat, looking for signs of life, friend or enemy. That's when he saw her. A small figure crouched in the rubble of what had once been a tall building. The girl, no more than 10 by human standards, had her head bowed low, her arms wrapped tightly around her legs. Her hair was a dark, flowing mass, streaked with dirt and ash, and her armor was torn, barely holding together. She was trembling, not from cold, but from fear. She didn't notice Elias yet, lost in her own struggle to survive. Elias' heart tightened. War had taught him to focus on strategy, on missions and objectives, on victories. But in that moment he felt something else, the instinct to protect the innocent. This child, though she was alien, was just that, a child, and she needed help. He moved carefully, keeping low, his steps silent against the cracked stone. The patrols were everywhere, scouts and drones searching for survivors, for enemies. One wrong move and both he and the girl would be dead. He slid behind a broken wall, peering through the cracks. Several alien soldiers, tall and covered in glistening armor that seemed alive with light, were moving between the ruins. They were looking for her, he realized. They didn't want her alive. Elias cursed under his breath. This changed everything. Saving her was no longer just an act of kindness, it was dangerous. But the thought of leaving her to die, trapped and defenseless, was impossible. Humans had long believed that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Elias had always lived by that principle. He waited, calculating. The soldiers were methodical but not fast. He could move during the shadows, slip between the rubble, and reach her before they even noticed. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and then ran. The girl looked up at the sudden sound and froze, wide-eyed. Her voice came out as a quiet, frightened whisper in a language Elias didn't understand. Still, her fear was universal. Elias held up his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. Then he bent down, signaling for her to follow him. She hesitated, glancing at the soldiers. One of them turned in her direction, scanning the ruins. "Now!" Elias whispered, more to himself than her, and grabbed her hand. She recoiled at first, but then, sensing his calm, took it. Together, they darted from cover to cover, moving like shadows through the crumbling city. Explosions echoed in the distance, sending showers of dust and stone into the air, but they kept running. At one point, they reached a collapsed corridor where the soldiers had already searched. Elias paused, crouched low, and held the girl behind a broken wall. One of the alien soldiers passed too close, their armor shimmering, their eyes scanning the darkness. Elias' hand went to his weapon, but he didn't fire. They had to be clever, not loud. The soldier moved on, and Elias let out a slow breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Come on," he murmured, and they continued. The girl, though small and weak, matched his pace as best as she could, her small hand gripping his tightly. For the first time, he noticed the way she looked at him, her eyes wide, a mix of fear and trust forming in her gaze. That look, simple and human in its emotion, was more powerful than any weapon he carried. They reached the edge of the city, where the ruins gave way to rocky hills and jagged cliffs. The sounds of battle were distant here, almost muted. Elias lowered her gently to the ground. She stared up at him unsure, and he smiled. "You're safe," he said simply, though the words felt strange on his tongue. Alien or not, she understood the meaning. Safety, hope, survival. For a moment she didn't move. Then she nodded slowly, stepping closer, almost as if she was testing the reality of being saved. Elias scanned the horizon. They weren't out of danger yet. The patrols could easily track them. But he had a plan, a way to get her to a neutral zone, where humans and friendly aliens could provide temporary refuge. As they began moving again, Elias thought about the girl. Who was she? Why had her own people left her to die? And most importantly, what would happen if they found her before he could get her to safety? The questions were heavy, but he pushed them aside. Action mattered more than speculation now. Hours passed. The sky turned dark, and the alien moons rose high above, casting pale light across the jagged landscape. Elias kept moving, using every skill he had learned in countless missions, reading the terrain, predicting enemy patrols, moving silently. The girl followed, exhausted but determined, her small hand never leaving his. At one point, they reached a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on either side, making it impossible for patrols to spot them from above. Elias guided her through, using the shadows to their advantage. Then suddenly a figure appeared ahead, blocking their path. It was not an enemy soldier, but a scout from another alien faction, one that had not yet joined the war. Elias froze, assessing the situation. The scout raised a hand, but did not attack. The girl's eyes widened in terror. Elias knelt down beside her. "Stay close," he whispered. The scout spoke in a language he didn't know, but the tone was cautious, curious. Elias realized the scout was not here to fight, they were watching. Elias made a decision. He stepped forward, raising his hands to show no threat. He nodded to the scout, signaling that they only wanted passage. After a tense moment, the scout motioned for them to follow. Relief flooded him. They weren't out of danger, but they had allies, or at least neutral observers. Night deepened. Elias and the girl made camp in a small crevice, protected from wind and sight. He offered her some rations, which she accepted silently. She had not spoken much, only glancing at him now and then as if measuring whether he could be trusted. Elias understood. Trust was fragile, especially in a world filled with enemies. As he watched the girl sleep, exhausted and vulnerable, Elias felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. He had not only survived this battle, he had made a choice that went beyond orders or strategy. He had chosen to protect life, even when that life belonged to someone his people considered an enemy. Far above them, in a distant city, someone was watching. High Commander Thalira, the girl's mother, observed through advanced surveillance. Her eyes narrowed as she saw a human carrying her child through the ruins. Humans were considered weak, insignificant, even dangerous, but here was one defying everything her culture believed. Curiosity flickered across her face, mixing with something unexpected: respect. Elias did not know it yet, but his actions had set events into motion that would challenge not only the war but the galaxy's understanding of humanity itself. One act of courage, one decision to save a child, had drawn the attention of one of the most powerful alien leaders in existence. And so, under the pale moons and amidst the silent ruins, a human soldier and an alien child took their first steps into a story that would change everything. The moons cast a cold light over the alien landscape, their pale glow stretching shadows across jagged rocks and cratered plains. Elias Kane stayed alert, though he had let himself relax for a brief moment while the girl slept beside him. Her chest rose and fell steadily, a fragile rhythm that reminded him of the responsibility he carried. Lyria was not only small and defenseless, she was precious in ways he could not yet understand. And someone else knew it too. Far away, in a towering citadel carved from black stone, High Commander Thalira observed through the alien screens. She sat on a high chair that seemed to float above the floor, her multiple limbs folded with perfect discipline. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, traced every movement of the human who had dared to intervene in her world. Elias Kane, the one who had saved her daughter, was not just a soldier. To Thalira, he represented a puzzle, a test, and perhaps a revelation. Humans were weak. They lacked the strength, the discipline, and the advanced abilities her species valued above all. Yet here was one, moving through her city's ruins, carrying her child as if life itself depended on it. Her fingers brushed over controls, and a holographic map displayed the terrain Elias had traversed. The sensors could detect heat signatures, energy emissions, and biological markers. Elias had taken every precaution, but not everything could hide from her. She studied his tactics with meticulous attention. He was careful, intelligent, adaptive. He made choices that no ordinary human would. And for the first time, Thalira considered a possibility she had never entertained. Maybe humans were underestimated. Back in the canyon, Elias had begun moving again. The girl had woken, rubbing her eyes and staring up at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "You're safe," he repeated gently, as if saying it could make it true. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed lingering doubts. He knew the journey ahead was far from over. The alien patrols would be relentless and the terrain itself was treacherous. But he could not stop, not now, not ever. "Do you understand me?" he asked softly. Lyria tilted her head, her ears twitching slightly. Her language was foreign to him, but gestures were universal. She pointed to her chest, then to him, then raised a small hand in the shape of a circle. Elias guessed she was asking for reassurance, for proof that he would not abandon her. He nodded, squeezing her hand. Trust was the first victory in any conflict, and he had to earn it. They moved cautiously through narrow paths, climbing over broken structures and weaving between jagged cliffs. Every shadow could hide a scout. Every sound could signal danger. Elias' mind worked constantly, calculating, predicting, adapting. Lyria followed, her small feet stepping where he had carefully measured the way. She spoke occasionally, short words that he could not understand. Yet each time he responded with nods, smiles, and simple gestures. Communication was not only verbal, it was trust, presence, and shared intent. Hours passed. Hunger gnawed at him, but Elias ignored it. He had food for Lyria, and that was enough for the moment. They stopped beside a small stream where water trickled through black stones, and he motioned for her to drink. The water was cold, clear, and strangely sweet, even by human standards. Lyria bent down, lapping at the stream carefully while Elias scanned the horizon. The alien patrols had not followed, but that did not mean they were safe. The enemy moved differently, silently, efficiently. Meanwhile, in the citadel, Thalira's eyes narrowed. She studied Lyria, noting how the girl clung to the human with quiet trust. "Interesting," she murmured to herself, her voice low and melodic. "He does not fear, he does not exploit, he protects." She rose from her chair, her limbs moving with grace and precision. "Prepare a message," she instructed. Her voice carried a subtle command, one that did not threaten but demanded compliance. "I want to observe him more closely." A holographic assistant flickered before her, a small orb of light that could project images and messages across vast distances. Thalira activated it, sending a discreet signal toward Elias' location. She did not intend to confront him yet. That would be too direct, too aggressive. No, she needed to test him, to understand him, to see if he was as extraordinary as he appeared. Back in the canyon, Elias noticed a sudden flicker in the shadows, a faint light almost invisible moving with the wind. He paused, crouched low, and scanned the area. The light pulsed again. Someone was watching. He did not panic. Humans were survivors, trained to act when everything seemed lost. He moved carefully, signaling for Lyria to stay behind a rock. The flicker continued, then vanished. Elias did not pursue. Observation was harmless for now, and rushing into the unknown could be deadly. Night deepened. The moons rose higher, casting silver light across the terrain. Elias led Lyria to a safer vantage point, a rocky overhang that offered shelter and a clear view of the path they had traveled. He built a small fire using sparking stones and dry wood, careful to keep it low. Smoke could give them away, but warmth and light were necessary. Lyria watched, curious as he worked, her small hands mimicking his actions. "You'll need to be strong," Elias said quietly. "Not just for today, but for everything that comes next." He looked at her face, dirt-streaked and tired, but resilient. "I promise I will not let anyone harm you." Lyria reached out, resting her small hand on his. It was a gesture of trust, and Elias felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a companion, and together they were stronger than they seemed. Hours later, as the fire burned low, Elias heard a soft rustle from above. He froze, hand on his weapon, and waited. A small drone, sleek and silent, hovered near the fire. It was not aggressive, only observing. He lowered his weapon slowly. Someone wanted to watch, not attack. High above, Thalira watched through her screens, analyzing every movement. She saw the human's careful strategies, his protective stance, his subtle communication with the girl. Her mind, trained to calculate risks and benefits, found herself reconsidering assumptions about humans. They were unpredictable, yes, but not weak. They had creativity, empathy, and courage, qualities that her people valued but rarely saw in outsiders. Elias packed their small camp before dawn, moving silently through the rocks. Lyria followed, her trust now solid enough to move with him without hesitation. He could feel danger approaching, a patrol, perhaps, or something worse. Yet he did not panic. Every challenge so far had strengthened him, sharpened his instincts. He would not fail, not for her. By mid-morning, they reached a narrow pass that would lead them to a safer zone, a neutral area where human allies could provide temporary refuge. The path was treacherous, lined with sharp cliffs and unstable rocks. Elias guided Lyria carefully, steadying her when she stumbled. She looked at him once, eyes wide, and nodded. The unspoken understanding was clear. They depended on each other, and each step mattered. From afar, Thalira observed silently. She noted every gesture, every decision Elias made. The girl's safety was paramount, and yet the human never hesitated or faltered. His dedication was remarkable, almost alien in its intensity. She considered intervening directly, but something within her hesitated. She wanted to see how far he would go, how much he would risk. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the jagged landscape, Elias and Lyria finally reached the edge of the dangerous zone. The neutral area stretched before them, a small valley with ruins untouched by war, hidden from patrols and drones. Elias let himself breathe for the first time in hours. They were safe for now. Lyria ran ahead, exploring the quiet space, but always glancing back to ensure Elias was with her. He smiled quietly, watching her curiosity and bravery. She had survived this far, and together they could survive farther still. Far above, Thalira leaned back in her chair. The human had passed the first tests, though unknowingly. He had shown courage, intelligence, and compassion, all in equal measure. She made a decision that would shape the next phase of this unfolding story. The human would not be dismissed as weak. He would be observed, challenged, and perhaps, eventually, recognized for what he truly was. A representative of humanity, a species her people had underestimated at their peril. And so, as the moons traced their silent path across the alien sky, Elias, Cain, and Lyria, the human and the rescued child, continued their journey. Every step brought them closer to danger, but also closer to understanding, to trust, and to a future neither could yet imagine. Somewhere beyond the horizon, High Commander Thalira watched, her curiosity now tempered by respect, and a faint, unspoken fascination with the courage of the human who had dared to save her daughter. Elias Cain moved cautiously through the rugged terrain, every step deliberate, every movement calculated. Lyria followed closely, her small hand gripping his, trusting him completely. The alien valley offered temporary safety, but Elias knew danger was never far. Patrolling drones, alien scouts, and unpredictable terrain meant they could be attacked at any moment. Yet, despite the tension, Elias felt a strange sense of purpose. Saving this child, protecting her, had become more than a mission. It was a commitment, a testament to the resilience and courage of humans, a species often underestimated. The girl's eyes scanned their surroundings constantly, her ears twitching at every sound. She pointed to distant cliffs and whispered words Elias could not understand, but the tone carried meaning, curiosity, fear, and a desire to understand the world around her. Elias nodded, acknowledging her, and for the first time in hours allowed himself a small smile. Communication was more than words, it was trust, and he had earned that trust. The quiet of the valley was broken by a sudden, sharp noise. A rock slid down a slope nearby, and both of them froze. Elias crouched low, scanning the terrain. A group of alien scouts had appeared, their sleek armor glinting in the sunlight. They were smaller than Thalira's elite troops, but no less dangerous. Elias' mind raced, calculating escape routes, obstacles, and the best way to protect Lyria. "Stay close," he whispered, and the girl pressed against him, her small body trembling but unwavering. The scouts moved cautiously, unaware of the hidden pair. Elias knew they had to act quickly. If the scouts discovered Lyria, the consequences could be fatal. Using the terrain to his advantage, he led her along a narrow ledge, barely wide enough for them to pass. Below them, the ground dropped sharply into a chasm filled with jagged rocks. The scouts continued down the main path, oblivious to the pair above. Hours passed with tense silence. Lyria occasionally spoke, pointing out small details in the terrain or reacting to distant sounds. Elias responded patiently, explaining in simple words and gestures what they were doing. Despite the danger, he made sure to teach her, to involve her. Humans thrived not only through strength but through knowledge, and he believed that empowering her could make all the difference. As dusk approached, the temperature dropped. Elias spotted a natural cave entrance partially hidden by jagged rocks and led Lyria inside. The space was small but safe, providing shelter from the wind and the possibility of scouts passing nearby. Inside, he made a small fire using collected twigs and stones, keeping it low so the smoke would not give away their position. Lyria sat close to the warmth, her eyes wide as she watched Elias prepare their meager meal. He handed her a small portion, and she ate silently but with careful attention, as if every bite mattered. Afterward, she leaned against him, exhausted. Elias looked at her and realized how much courage she had shown. Despite her young age, she had faced dangers that would have overwhelmed most adults, and yet she had survived. Humans valued resilience, adaptability, and the ability to endure in impossible circumstances, and he saw those qualities mirrored in her. Far above, in her floating citadel, High Commander Thalira watched. Her eyes narrowed as she analyzed Elias' every movement. He was resourceful, cautious, and protective, traits she admired, though she would never admit them aloud. Thalira had observed countless species over the centuries, yet humans were unusual. Their weaknesses were obvious, but their strengths were subtle, hidden in ways that made them dangerous in unexpected ways. Elias Kane was a prime example. She did not yet understand him fully, but she intended to. The night passed with little disturbance. Elias kept watch in shifts, though sleep came in short bursts. Lyria slept beside him, curled tightly, the trust between them unbroken. By morning, they were ready to continue. Elias packed their supplies, securing the small fire and preparing to move before any patrols could detect them. The landscape stretched out before them, rocky and jagged, with dangers hidden in every shadow. Yet Elias' determination never wavered. Their path led them through a series of narrow canyons, each twist and turn presenting new challenges. Rocks were unstable, paths were uneven, and sudden drops could end in fatal falls. Elias guided Lyria carefully, demonstrating where to step, how to test the ground, and how to move quietly. The girl absorbed every lesson, her eyes bright with understanding. In this harsh environment, humans had an advantage. Their intelligence, creativity, and capacity for learning allowed them to navigate dangers in ways other species often overlooked. Suddenly, a distant explosion shook the cliffs. Dust and debris rained down from above, and the sound of alien shouts echoed across the valley. Elias pressed himself and Lyria against the canyon wall, assessing the source. Rival alien factions were moving through the area, perhaps drawn by the chaos of war or the scent of prey. Elias' mind raced. They had to move quickly, but the terrain offered little cover. He spotted a narrow path leading up a slope, partially hidden by rocks. It was risky, steep, and unstable, but it offered a chance to escape the patrols below. Elias held Lyria's hand tightly and began the ascent. The climb was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Loose rocks shifted under their weight, forcing Elias to adjust constantly. Lyria's small body struggled, but her determination never faltered. Humans valued perseverance, and in her quiet resolve, he saw a reflection of his own strength. Hours passed. The sun began to rise, painting the sky with shades of gold and red. Elias and Lyria reached the top of the ridge, overlooking a wide valley below. From this vantage point, they could see signs of civilization, structures partially intact, suggesting that humans or friendly aliens might be nearby. Relief washed over him, but he remained vigilant. Danger was never far behind. As they prepared to descend, a shadow fell across the ridge. Elias looked up and saw a figure standing at the edge, a scout from Thalira's citadel, not a threat but a messenger. The figure observed silently, then vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Elias understood the meaning. Thalira was watching. His actions, his decisions, and his treatment of Lyria were being noted, assessed. He did not fear her, but he knew the implications. She had power, influence, and intelligence far beyond most beings he had encountered. Descending into the valley, Elias guided Lyria carefully, using the lessons learned from their journey to avoid patrols and hazards. Every step reinforced their bond, their mutual reliance. Lyria began to speak more, though her words were fragmented and difficult for Elias to understand. Still, the tone, the inflection, the gestures, all communicated meaning. Trust was a language humans understood deeply, and he had taught her to speak it without words. By mid-afternoon, they reached a partially intact settlement. Buildings were damaged but standing, providing shelter and resources. Elias scanned the area for threats, then led Lyria inside. The place was empty, yet it offered safety and a chance to rest. He allowed her a brief moment to explore, to reclaim a sense of normalcy in a world otherwise dominated by fear and destruction. While Lyria explored, Elias reflected on the journey so far. Every decision, every risk, every moment of courage had brought them closer to survival. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, seen as weak or insignificant. Yet in his actions, in his ingenuity, and in his empathy, Elias demonstrated the qualities that made humanity resilient, capable, and remarkable. He had saved a life, and in doing so, he had challenged the assumptions of an entire species. High above, Thalira observed still. Her expression was unreadable, but her mind raced with calculations and curiosity. The human had passed every obstacle, every test, though he did not know he was being tested. His protection of Lyria, his ingenuity in navigating dangers, and his unwavering determination had impressed her. He was no ordinary human. Perhaps, she thought, humans deserved more attention, more respect than her people had ever granted them. As evening approached, Elias prepared their temporary camp within the settlement. Lyria sat close, her small body leaning against his side as he shared what little food they had. She listened attentively as he spoke, not understanding every word, but absorbing the tone, the intention, the care behind it. Communication extended beyond language, and in this quiet moment, trust deepened into something more profound. Connection. Night fell and Elias took the first watch, eyes scanning the horizon for danger. Lyria slept soundly beside him, her small hand resting on his arm. In the distance, the moons rose, casting a pale glow over the valley. Elias felt a quiet determination settle within him. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with danger, challenges, and tests of courage, but he was ready. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and he carried that legacy with him. High Commander Thalira withdrew from the observation screens, her thoughts consumed by the human soldier who had dared to defy expectations. He was brave, resourceful, and compassionate, a combination rare in any species. She would continue to watch, to test, and perhaps one day to challenge him directly. But for now, she allowed him a measure of freedom. Observing him from a distance was sufficient. She wanted to see how far he would go, how he would protect her daughter, and how he would face the trials yet to come. And so, under the watchful eyes of distant moons and an even more distant commander, Elias, Cain, and Lyria rested for the night, preparing for the next phase of their journey. Each step, each decision, and each act of courage was shaping not only their own destiny, but the perception of humanity itself, a species underestimated, yet capable of extraordinary strength, resilience, and compassion in a galaxy that had never truly noticed before. The valley. Below stretched wide and silent, but Elias Cain knew that silence often carried danger. From the ridge where he stood, he could see the remnants of the alien settlement, its buildings damaged yet standing, offering a temporary haven for those willing to use it wisely. Lyria, small and eager, explored the perimeter, her movements careful but curious. Elias kept a watchful eye on her, scanning for anything that might threaten them. For days, they had traveled carefully, avoiding patrols and using the terrain to their advantage. Elias had grown familiar with the rhythms of the land, the way shadows fell, the sound of distant creatures, the faint vibrations that warned of approaching scouts. Each step had been a test of survival, but he had begun to understand the terrain in ways no alien would expect from a human. High above, High Commander Thalira observed with her usual precision. Her gaze followed every action, every decision Elias made. She had been impressed by his strategy and compassion. Unlike most humans, he seemed to anticipate danger, protect the vulnerable, and adapt instantly to new situations. Thalira's mind, trained to analyze strength and efficiency, noted it all. Perhaps this human was exceptional, or perhaps humans in general possessed qualities her people had ignored for too long. Elias moved Lyria toward the edge of the settlement, where a narrow canyon led to a plateau beyond. The plateau would be safer, a vantage point from which they could scout enemy movements and plan their next step. As they approached, the ground trembled slightly, the vibration reaching Elias before the sound. He crouched low, motioning for Lyria to follow. Dust rose from the canyon below, and the silhouettes of a rival alien faction became visible. They were well armed, moving with disciplined precision. Their target was clear, the settlement, and anyone sheltering there. Elia's mind raced. Retreat was not an option. They would be trapped in the canyon with no cover. Yet, hiding would not suffice either. The aliens would find them eventually. The solution required ingenuity, courage, and timing. He scanned the plateau for resources, fallen beams, rocks, and natural traps. A plan formed quickly in his mind, one that relied on speed, human creativity, and an understanding of alien behavior. "Lyria, stay close," he whispered, squeezing her hand. She nodded, her trust absolute. Together, they ascended the narrow path, moving with careful precision. Elias positioned himself at the edge of the plateau, scanning the approaching faction. Their armor glinted in the sun, their weapons advanced, but Elias noted their predictable patterns. They had underestimated humans before, assuming fear would dictate their actions. They were about to learn otherwise. He gathered a few large rocks and smaller debris, arranging them strategically along the edge of the plateau. Using simple physics and timing, he created a series of small, controlled avalanches designed to slow the advancing aliens without revealing his exact position. Lyria watched, fascinated, as he demonstrated how to use the environment to their advantage. Humans often excelled not through brute strength, but through creativity and intelligence, and this moment was a perfect example. The alien faction moved into the canyon, unaware of the traps above. Elias signaled subtly, and Lyria followed his guidance, moving silently to positions where she could observe without danger. He waited, calculating the moment to strike. Then, with a precise push, rocks tumbled down, creating a controlled cascade that blocked the path and delayed the enemies. The aliens paused, scanning the terrain, but the sudden obstacles forced them to slow down. Elias seized the moment. Using his knowledge of alien technology, he activated a small device that emitted a sound mimicking a predator's call native to the planet. The aliens reacted instinctively, their formations breaking as they attempted to locate the source of the noise. Elias used the distraction to lead Lyria through a hidden path along the plateau, moving quickly and silently. They reached a vantage point overlooking the settlement. From here, Elias could see the rival faction regrouping, frustrated and unaware of the human and the girl observing them. Lyria pointed to the scouts below, and Elias nodded. She had begun to understand their behavior, the rhythm of movement, and the patterns that could be exploited. Humans had a unique ability to teach, learn, and adapt simultaneously, and in this small, dangerous moment, Lyria was learning from Elias in ways that could save her life. High above, Thalira's attention sharpened. The human had orchestrated a defense without direct confrontation, using strategy, observation, and ingenuity. He had delayed a well-trained alien faction with nothing more than rocks, a sound device, and careful timing. She noted the lesson this human taught her people. Strength was not always measured by power or weapons, but by intelligence, creativity, and courage. As night fell, Elias and Lyria prepared to descend into the settlement. The rival faction had retreated slightly, regrouping for another attempt at assault. Elias knew this window was their chance to fortify positions and plan an evacuation if necessary. Using debris and the terrain, he created additional obstacles to slow any future approach. Each placement was precise, deliberate, and effective, an example of human adaptability in a world that often underestimated it. Inside the settlement, Elias secured a temporary shelter. Lyria, exhausted but alert, helped as best she could, stacking stones and checking corners for safety. Her curiosity and determination impressed him. Despite the dangers she had faced, she continued to learn, to adapt, to grow. Humans valued resilience, and in Lyria he saw that same spark. Protecting her was not just an act of compassion, it was a lesson in trust, intelligence, and perseverance. The following day, scouts from Thalira's citadel appeared, observing from a distance. They did not approach directly but watched Elias' actions closely. It was a test, subtle but clear. Elias understood this instinctively. He acted not with aggression but with precision, patience, and calculation. Each decision reinforced the trust Lyria had placed in him, while demonstrating to the alien observers that humans were capable of far more than their species had assumed. Elias decided it was time to take a bolder step. Using the plateau and the settlement structures, he created a makeshift signaling device designed to attract the attention of friendly humans stationed nearby. The device needed to be subtle enough to avoid alerting the rival faction, yet visible enough for allies to notice. Lyria watched as he carefully arranged reflective surfaces and timed flashes, explaining in simple gestures and words what he was doing. Even in danger, he taught her to understand strategy, to see the value of foresight and preparation. Hours later, the signals were noticed. From a distance, a small squad of human allies approached, their ships landing safely near the edge of the settlement. Elias greeted them with careful precision, ensuring that no enemy noticed their arrival. Lyria, excited and relieved, clung to Elias, understanding the significance even without words. Humans were not only brave, they were intelligent, capable of using ingenuity to overcome danger, and they often succeeded where others failed. The allied humans helped fortify the settlement, preparing for potential attacks from the rival faction. Elias coordinated the defenses, his leadership clear and effective. Every strategy he implemented demonstrated a combination of human creativity, adaptability, and empathy. Even the alien observers watching from a distance could not deny the impact of his decisions. Thalira noted each move, impressed by the human's ability to inspire trust, organize defenses, and act decisively under pressure. As night fell once more, Elias sat with Lyria, watching the moons rise above the settlement. The patrols had retreated for now, and their temporary safety allowed a rare moment of reflection. Lyria leaned against him, exhausted but alert, and Elias felt a quiet pride. Protecting her had become more than a duty. It was a demonstration of humanity's strength in the galaxy, a proof that courage, intelligence, and compassion could overcome prejudice and danger. Thalira, observing from her citadel, finally spoke aloud, though no one heard her words. "Humans," she murmured, "they are far more dangerous than I ever imagined, not because of weapons, but because of their will, their intelligence, and their courage. This human, Elias Kane, he is an example of what they can achieve when underestimated." The night passed with cautious calm. Elias took the first watch, scanning the horizon while Lyria slept beside him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rival factions, the continued war, and the journey ahead. Yet, for the first time in days, he felt a measure of hope. Humanity had been underestimated by countless species. Yet here, on this alien world, a single human had changed the course of events, protecting a life, demonstrating ingenuity, and earning the attention of one of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. As dawn broke, Elias prepared for the next stage of their journey. The valley, scarred and dangerous, was not just a place of survival. It was a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Every rock displaced, every signal sent, every decision made reflected qualities that aliens often overlooked but could not ignore. And somewhere above, High Commander Thalira watched, curious, calculating, and perhaps beginning to respect the human who had dared to challenge expectations and protect her daughter with courage and intelligence beyond measure. Elias knew the path ahead would test them both. Lyria would continue to learn, to adapt, and to grow, and he would continue to guide and protect her. Every step forward was a demonstration of humanity's value, a lesson in courage, ingenuity, and compassion. The galaxy had not yet fully recognized the strength of humans, but through actions like these, Elias Kane was changing that perception, one courageous act at a time. The first light of dawn stretched across the alien valley, casting long shadows over the jagged ruins and partially restored buildings. Elias Kane stood on the ridge, his eyes scanning the horizon. The rival faction that had threatened the settlement was gone for now, retreating to lick their wounds and regroup. Lyria stood beside him, small and resilient, her eyes reflecting both exhaustion and determination. After days of running, hiding, and surviving, they had reached a point where action could turn the tide. The human's arrival and Elias' ingenuity had shifted the balance. The settlement, once abandoned and fragile, now stood strong, fortified not just by walls and weapons, but by the courage, intelligence, and strategy that Elias had brought to the task. High above, in her floating citadel, High Commander Thalira observed with sharp, calculating eyes. She had watched Elias from the first moment he had rescued Lyria, intrigued by his bravery and resourcefulness. Over the past days, her curiosity had grown into something more complicated. She recognized the human qualities that her species often dismissed: empathy, courage, creativity, and the unyielding will to protect those weaker than oneself. The question now was not whether Elias was capable. She had witnessed that, but what his presence meant for the galaxy. A human had not only survived, but had outmaneuvered trained alien soldiers, earned the trust of a vulnerable child, and gained the attention of one of the most powerful leaders on the planet. Thalira considered her options carefully. The child she had once viewed as vulnerable and expendable now represented a bridge between species, and Elias represented humanity itself, a species her people had long underestimated. Elias and Lyria descended into the settlement, moving carefully through the fortified streets. The humans who had arrived with reinforcements began coordinating with him, placing defenses, rationing supplies, and preparing for any potential attack from the rival faction. Elias directed their efforts with quiet confidence. His presence inspired trust, not just in Lyria but in the soldiers around him. Humans had a way of leading by example, by showing courage, intelligence, and empathy all at once. As he worked, Lyria stayed close, helping where she could. Despite her young age, she had learned quickly from Elias how to observe patterns, anticipate danger, and act with precision. Her trust in him was complete, and in return, he treated her as a capable partner, never underestimating her potential. The bond between them had grown beyond protector and protected. They were allies, united by circumstance, courage, and shared survival. By midday, a distant signal indicated the approach of another force. The rival alien faction had returned, stronger and more organized. Elias scanned their formation, noting predictable patterns and weaknesses. He turned to the human reinforcements and Lyria, outlining a plan. It was unconventional, relying not on sheer firepower but on strategy, timing, and the element of surprise. Humans often excelled in such situations, thinking creatively when conventional methods failed. As the enemy advanced, Elias positioned the humans strategically throughout the settlement. Lyria moved with him, small but alert, acting as a scout from vantage points he had identified earlier. Together, they observed enemy movements, anticipating their attacks and adjusting defenses in real time. The rival faction was strong, but their strength relied on predictability. Elias' ingenuity turned that advantage into a liability. The battle began with subtle skirmishes. Rocks, traps, and careful maneuvers delayed the enemy while humans executed precision strikes from concealed positions. Lyria signaled the approach of soldiers, her small voice carrying critical information. Every action reinforced the lesson the humans had learned. Intelligence, strategy, and courage could outweigh raw power. From her citadel, Thalira observed silently. Elias' leadership was remarkable, but it was his humanity, the empathy, the ingenuity, and the courage to act for the protection of another, that captivated her attention. Humans were not merely soldiers or survivors. They were problem solvers, adaptable and relentless when defending those they cared about. Thalira made a decision that would change the future. She activated a direct communication channel to Elias. The display flickered and her image appeared before him, a commanding presence, her multiple limbs poised with authority. The human soldiers around him froze, unsure whether to act, but Elias remained calm. He had faced danger before. Diplomacy and confrontation were simply another battlefield. "Human," Thalira's voice echoed, strong and measured, "you have done what few could. You have protected my daughter, preserved this settlement, and outmaneuvered trained soldiers. Your actions have been extraordinary." Elias bowed his head slightly, respectful but wary. "I did what was right," he said simply. "She is a child, no one should harm her." Thalira's expression softened, though her eyes remained sharp. "Your compassion is unusual, yet effective. It is a quality I respect, though it is rare among your species. You have proven that humans are more capable than I previously believed. Perhaps they are worthy of trust, even partnership." Elias nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He had not only survived countless dangers, but had also earned the respect of one of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. "I only act for what is right," he said. "Trust is earned, not given." Thalira studied him silently, then turned her gaze to Lyria, who was watching the exchange from a safe distance. The child had grown stronger, more confident, and more resilient under Elias' guidance. Thalira's mind considered the possibilities. A human and her daughter united, capable of bridging the divide between species, fostering understanding, and creating a future her people had never imagined. "Then you will have a choice," Thalira said at last. Continue as you have, and you may leave this planet safely with the child. Or you may aid us in strengthening the alliance between humans and my people. Your decision will shape more than your lives. It may shape the future of interspecies relations in this sector. Elias looked at Lyria, who nodded subtly, understanding the weight of the decision even without fully grasping the words. Together, they represented not just survival, but hope, a chance for humanity to be recognized as a force of courage, intelligence, and moral strength. I will help, Elias said finally, not for power or reward, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves and to prove that trust and courage are stronger than fear and prejudice. Thalira's gaze lingered on him, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and cautious optimism. Very well, she said. Then we will begin. The days that followed were a flurry of preparation. Elias worked closely with Thalira's commanders, human reinforcements, and Lyria to fortify settlements, organize defenses, and establish communication networks between species. Every action demonstrated human adaptability and intelligence. Aliens who had doubted humans began to see their potential, their unique ability to inspire trust and act decisively under pressure. Through it all, Lyria grew more confident. She moved independently, observed strategies, and even offered insights based on what she had learned from Elias. The bond between human and child was undeniable, a living testament to the power of empathy, guidance, and mutual respect. Eventually, the rival faction attempted one final assault. This time, they faced a unified force, humans and aliens working together, with Elias' strategies at the core. Every maneuver was precise, every action deliberate. Lyria acted as scout and communicator, her small voice carrying critical information. The enemy was outmatched, not just by weapons or numbers, but by the combined ingenuity, courage, and adaptability of those defending the settlements. When the dust settled, the rival faction retreated, defeated, and unable to challenge the alliance again. Victory belonged not only to strength, but to strategy, empathy, and cooperation, qualities exemplified by humanity. High above, Thalira observed the aftermath. Elias had proven himself not just as a warrior, but as a representative of humanity. She stepped forward, her multiple limbs folded gracefully, and addressed him directly. "You have done more than protect my daughter," she said. "You have shown that humans possess qualities we underestimated: courage, intelligence, compassion, and the ability to inspire trust. You have earned not only my respect, but the recognition that humanity is a species capable of shaping the future." Elias bowed slightly, acknowledging the honor without arrogance. "I did what any human would do," he said. "We fight not only with weapons, but with courage, creativity, and the desire to protect those who cannot defend themselves." Thalira nodded, satisfied. "Then humanity is no longer an unknown quantity. You have opened a door that cannot be closed. Your daughter," she gestured toward Lyria, "is safe, and your people are now recognized as allies and equals. The galaxy may yet learn to respect your kind." Elias looked at Lyria, who smiled, small but triumphant. Together, they had survived impossible odds, forged bonds between species, and proven that courage and compassion were stronger than fear and prejudice. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, and ignored, but now it stood recognized, not for weapons or power, but for qualities that could shape worlds. As the sun set over the alien valley, Elias, Lyria, and Thalira stood together, united not by species or blood, but by shared respect, trust, and understanding. The war-torn world around them would heal slowly, guided by the cooperation of humans and aliens. The galaxy had begun to see humanity in a new light, and Elias Kane had played a pivotal role in that transformation. He knew the journey was far from over. New challenges would arise, new battles would be fought, and new allies and enemies would appear. Yet for the first time, Elias felt that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure, not through domination, but through courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding will to protect life. And in that moment, under the pale moons and the dying light of the day, a human soldier, a rescued alien child, and the commander who had once doubted them all shared a simple truth. The galaxy had noticed humanity, and it would never underestimate them again.